Hi guys! Today we're going over retro interior design style and I'm going to focus on each era and how to bring that retro vibe into your space. So if you like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, or the 80s, there is a aesthetic that you can bring in to achieve these looks. So we're going to go through all of them rather quickly to cover how you can bring in a touch of these retro vibes into your space. So the 50s was a really exciting time in the interior design world. And what I love about the 50s items is that there's a lot of vintage decor pieces, but there's also a lot of really great reproductions. Some of the really iconic pieces like the Eames chair and ottoman, you can find a lot of different knockoffs. So you're not paying obviously the big dollars for it, but you are getting such a great look. And that is something that's actually quite timeless, but also very much a 50s vibe that you can bring into your space and is very iconic. Something else that was really popular in the 50s is that pretty pastel kitchens. So you might be familiar with the reproduction fridges. I feel like SMEG makes the ones that kind of look like that 50s vibe with the curve and then the pastel colors and the chrome details. That is very 50s. So bringing in those type of pieces into your space, especially in the beautiful color palettes that they have, is a really nice way to bring in that 50s vibe into your kitchen. And honestly, like the little teapot, I don't have a retro vibe going on in my kitchen, but there are elements that I look at and go, man, those are so cute. Like the little toaster and the little teapot. Anyways, I could go on all day. Funky patterned wallpaper is another really popular aesthetic from the 50s. Think about things with boomerangs or like an atomic motif. Also really popular was florals and damask, and really embrace that vintage style by applying a retro inspired wallpaper. It will definitely add a next level into your space if you're really wanting to go for that retro vibe. So in the 50s, lighting design became not just about practicality, but it actually just became some really beautiful decor pieces. So in order to create a really era appropriate space, you can choose some dynamic and abstract or even geometric shaped lighting. Thinking about a dramatic atomic chandelier for a modern retro interior design look will really go a long way to help you achieve this 50s style. Moving on to the 60s. So the groovy and space age vibes defined the 60s interior design. It's possible to achieve the same ambiance to suit a contemporary home by adopting some of the period's best known trends. So an iconic piece of furniture from the 60s would be the shell chair. It's a very sleek design. What's funny about Wagner's chair that was made in 1963 is it actually became really popular in the 90s, but it is a 60s chair. So interestingly enough, it was in the 60s that plants became huge inside of your home. I feel like we're still talking about that. So we've been talking about plants for a while, but bringing in lots of house plants of various sizes and scale is a really great way to pay homage to the 60s decor style. And then do not forget about the bar cart. So let the good times roll with the bar cart. So these are some of the staples of the 60s. And they take up not too much space, but it's really great, especially if you have, an apartment or a smaller footprint, that you can bring in some of these little retro vibe finishes and details through stuff like a little bar cart. Another big trend from the 60s that we've seen a really big resurgence in the last few years is macrame wall art. So this is, that handcraft item that really surged in popularity. What I love about macrame is you don't actually have to find a vintage piece because you can pretty much just go on Etsy and find lots of them. I did share that I have a bunch of macrame because I love it. So apparently I have a lot of 60s inspired design in my home and I didn't even really put it all together before. But yes, macrame was very big in the 60s. So you can bring it into your home and help revive that 60s vintage vibe or retro vibe. 70s. We're seeing the 70s again because the 70s retro style was all about cheerful colors, bold prints, and you guessed it, maximalism. So many people associated this decade with kitsch looks, However, if you pick a few iconic elements, you can really bring this retro vibe into your space. So one of those design icons from the 70s style is the hanging chair. I've seen a lot of these again. So interesting. Again, sometimes I'm surprised when I don't realize what decade they came from previously, but hanging chairs, really big in the 70s. So whether it's hanging from a ceiling or on a stand, hanging chairs are an icon of the 70s. They perfectly embody the carefree spirit of the decade. And really, they're just as fun today. The 70s retro vibe wouldn't be completed without a shag carpet. So you can bring this in through an accent piece. So shag carpets were all the rage in the 70s. However, I think committing to an entire carpet done in that shag style might be just a little too much, even, for today's standards. So a shaggy accent pillow, an area rug, or a faux fur throw can be a really great way to bring that same character and add that little bit of depth and warmth of that 70s vibe to your space. But if you are really into that Maximus vibe and you love that 70s retro feel, go with an awesome shaggy, fun upholstered accent chair to really help, solidify this look. Another one that is, so on trend again. I think it's hilarious when you go through like each era and you see all the things that we're seeing right now. I feel like right now we have this kind of culmination of all these different eras mixing together to create its own aesthetic today. This one is Terrazzo. And yes, Terrazzo is super hot right now. Just go check out my trends video and you will see that Terrazzo has made a really big comeback. So if you like that 70s retro vibe, you may want to consider Terrazzo, whether it's in your floors, in a tile, in a backsplash, on a countertop, even furniture, like a side table. There's so many ways to bring in Terrazzo. If you guys are enjoying this content, also, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. I greatly appreciate it. So I thought I'd just add that in there. Was that seamless? Not really. The 70s was also known for its linoleum flooring. Yes, and it's actually back because it's very sustainable. So unlike the 70s version of it, the newer versions of the linoleum is a great way to bring in a touch of the 70s, however, having all the modern technologies instilled in it. So it's much better than it used to be. So yes, linoleum, it's back, and it's very much a 70s flashback. So that brings us to the 80s retro interior design style, and that is a very bold style. The 80s were bold and crazy time when it came to interior design. However, this decade left us with some fantastic decor trends. So one of the iconic items from the 80s era is this circle chair. So the circle chair is another Wagner design. It was first produced in 1986, and surprisingly, these chairs are actually still available, but they're on a made-to-order basis. Apparently, it has to do with their complex production process and the expertise that's required to create one. However, it is an ultimate 80s, must-have. So another interesting feature from the 80s retro home is translucent furniture. I do remember this. So clear furniture made of materials like acrylic and lucite have been around since the 80s. And these are really perfect for making an interior feel clean, uncluttered, and roomy. Pair these with some vintage style decors, contemporary elements, and more, transparent furniture could really help up that 80s retro vibe in your space. A fun one, and again, this is the blending, neon signs and colors. We are seeing that again. So retro style living rooms, wouldn't have been complete without a pop of neon. And I feel like I've seen a lot of these really fun, interesting, and creative neon signs, and that's a way to really bring the 80s into your space. If you're going to be using some neon colors, I would say a little goes a long way. The 80s were also known for tropical prints and plants. So when you're going for that retro interior space, incorporate some tropical prints or indoor plants. I actually feel like if you do a great tropical plant, wallpaper, maybe an accent wall with a neon sign, you're really going to incorporate some of this 80s vibe, maybe even Miami Vice vibes. I hope you guys enjoyed this little retro vibe that we had for today's video, going through some fun ways of achieving different retro vibes from different decades. If you guys enjoyed today's video, YouTube seems to think you'll like this one next, so jump on over and check that one out next. Until next time, bye!